I was curious to know if the Mooney Ovation in Microsoft Flight Simulator could do an honest-to-goodness ILS landing with both localizer and glide slope. I searched the internet and YouTube looking for a tutorial, but alas, I did not find one. After getting some suggestions from friends, I found a method that works for me, and I'm going to share that with you. And if you already know how to do it, don't waste your time watching this. We're going to be taking off from the San Luis County Regional Airport. We'll be taking off on runway 11, and then we're going to be turning west out to the Pacific Ocean, and we're going to be flying down to the Santa Maria Public Airport, and that happens to have ILS on runway 12, and that's where we're going to be landing. And here's the approach plate for ILS on runway 12 down at the Santa Maria Public Airport. Note the localizer frequency in the upper left corner is 108.9. The approach course is 120 degrees. Down at the bottom where you see the profile, we need to arrive at the first waypoint on the approach, which is Winch, W-I-N-C-H, at above 3,300 feet. The next waypoint is Hildy, which happens to be the final approach fix, and we need to be there at above 2,000 feet. And for purposes of this tutorial, we're not going to be dealing with minimums. I set the weather to a very nice day. So here we are on runway 11 at San Luis County Regional Airport. So first I'm going to turn on the flight director and the nav mode, and I'm going to check and make sure that we're still in GPS for the nav. Yep, we are. Now you believe me. Now I'm going to tune both nav receivers to our localizer frequency of 108.9 and make sure that those frequencies are put into the active slot. Next, I'm going to go over to my Omni bearing display and set it to my approach course of 120 degrees. Note that it works on nav 2. But it doesn't matter because we set both radios to 108.9. Now comes the part that has gotten me in most trouble, and that's this altitude setting. I want to set this initially for 3,400 feet altitude. And I'll give you a clue here. Don't bother setting feet per minute at this point because it won't matter. When you arm your altitude, it's going to be initially at 500 feet per minute. You have to change it after it's gone into operation. So I want you to remember I just set it for 900 feet per minute, and you watch what happens later. Okay, let's boogie. Recall that I turned my nav mode and flight director on. As soon as I clear the runway down at the end, and have a nice positive climb rate, I'm going to, of course, bring my gear up, and then I'm going to punch the autopilot button and start following my nav route, which initially, recall, is GPS. We'll get on our course here in just a minute, and then I will take the altitude vertical speed and put it into play. Notice it says my vertical speed is 900 feet per minute, and it's going to be up to 3,400 feet. And look at my rate of climb indicator. Oh my, it says 500 feet. How about that? Let's go take a look. Oh, it's not 900 feet per minute anymore, but I have to change it now. I can change it now and it'll go up there. Be aware of that. Okay, here's what's going to happen. When we get up to our 3,400 feet after this vertical speed climb, I'm going to put the aircraft in altitude hold. So notice as we start getting close to the 3,400 feet, our rate of climb starts to decrease down towards zero. Very smooth. And now I'm going to put it in altitude hold. This lets me change my next altitude selection down to my next waypoint, which is at 2,100 feet. Until that time, it will stay at 3,400 feet since it is in altitude hold. By the way, if you haven't noticed, this Mooney Ovation runs like a scalded rabbit, and you really need to keep your eye on your speed. We just passed over Winch, and we have 8.9 nautical miles before we reach Hildy, which is our final approach fix, and we need to be at 2,100 feet. And I'll set us for 900 feet per minute down, please. Elevator down. We can now get off of GPS and go on to nav mode. And since we're now on nav mode, look at what's going on our OBS over here. Hey, we've got a localizer and a glide slope indicator. We still have about 5 nautical miles to go before we actually get to Hildy, which is our final approach fix, and we will not capture the glide slope until we get to Hildy. It will not bring us down. We will be sitting here at our 2,100 feet when we get to it until such time as we do cross Hildy and capture the glide slope. Hard lesson, but I learned it. Note that we got down to our 2,100 feet before we got to Hildy, and now we'll put this thing in altitude hold mode. Very important flash. You must go into this little device here, and watch when I click this. You got to make sure you set that altitude to 0 feet altitude. If you look at the glide slope bar in the OBS 2, you'll notice it's way up at the top. So it's time to hit the approach key, and then eventually we're going to want to make sure we turn altitude hold off. Time to put the gear down. Okay, altitude hold is off. We are now in approach mode, and pretty soon, like Hildy time, when we get to Hildy, the nose is going to drop, and we'll start descending at about 500 feet per minute. So let's keep our eyes open for that. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nose going down. We have now captured the glide slope, and if you'll notice in the OBS indicator, That horizontal line is just about in the middle. Now, your job, my job, as the pilot is to keep the airspeed between around 82 to 88 knots as close as you can, and you'll stay right on the glide path. All right, I got a little panicky. It looked to me like we were just a little bit over too far to the right, so I went in and changed the OBS course by 1 degree and watched it for a second. And then I changed it back to where it was, and everything was fine, as you'll see when we get to the end. Again, I'm not touching the joystick. My hand is only on the throttle, just controlling the speed. And the ILS is flying the airplane down to the runway. Autopilot, still flying the airplane with ILS. I'm still got my hand on the throttle. Autopilot off. Okay, get those flaps up or you'll be sorry. Okay, that's got to be the smoothest landing I've ever done, hands down. So if this has helped anyone, I'm glad. And this is now makes Mooney my most favorite aircraft to fly. My second most favorite aircraft is the Zlin Savage Cub. Love it. Take care, have fun, fly safe, and shoot some ILS landings.